Hi, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I am Mo, and I'm your average corporate worker.
I'm Jeremy. You're also your average corporate worker.
But hang on a second.
What?
There's one point about you, and you are our in-house pilot, and that needs to be said, and that needs to be known.
Well,
What are you for?
I do happen to be a private pilot. Yes, in-house.
All right.
I guess we could say that. I'm not flying anybody in terms of corporate, but I am a private pilot. About 300 hours, single engine land rating, and flown things from Cessnas, 172s, 152s, Warriors, Archers, time in Diamond aircraft, DA-40s, and some tailwheel time, actually, a tailwheel endorsement in a Citabria. So
Nice.
and even flown upside down on the occasion, which is kind of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we definitely have something in common. Not that I'm a pilot, but I do love aviation, and you love aviation, obviously, and we both love travel. So we decided to start this channel to have a platform to talk about the things that we enjoy and share those with you. And so we are going to start by talking about a topic within the aviation industry. And if you all remember, just over a year ago, the tragic loss of the Prime Air flight. It was a Boeing 767 operated by Atlas Air. And that plane went down just outside of Houston. And the NTSB just recently released an animation of the flight leading up to just before the loss of control and the crash. They released an animation of the instruments and what was said in the cockpit and sort of the behaviors of the aircraft and the pilots leading up to the crash. So we're going to take a look at that animation here just shortly, and then we're going to talk about it there on the tail end, and we'll have a discussion. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's roll the video.
All right.
We will show a short animation depicting the sequence of events. Note that the depictions are not necessarily identical to the airplane displays. In this still frame, you can see a simulated external view of the airplane, the analog airspeed indicator with digits to aid clarity, the main attitude director indicator including an airspeed tape display and artificial horizon. Here is a representation of the flight mode annunciator display, an analog altimeter, also with digits added for clarity, control yoke position, thrust levers, speed brake lever position, a profile graph, and select cockpit voice recorder transcript items. The crew was setting up the approach procedure when the airplane encountered light turbulence. Shortly afterward, the autopilot and auto throttles entered go-around mode as the airplane was passing about 6,300 feet. There were no flight crew callouts. Consistent with the activation of the go-around mode, the airplane arrested the descent and began a slight pitch-up, and the thrust levers advanced. The speed brakes were retracted, which could only be done manually. The captain responded to a routine radio call, while the first officer pushed forward on the column and made an expression about speed and exclaimed, "We're stalling." There was no indication that the airplane actually stalled. It was likely that the first officer was experiencing disorientation due to the somatographic illusion, in which airplane acceleration results in a false nose-high feeling. The airplane reached a steep nose-down attitude and high speed. Below about 3,000 feet, the airplane broke out of the clouds, the controls moved to full nose up, but it was too late before they impacted the bay.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
That was
That escalated quickly.
yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously a tragic ending to that flight, completely unexpected, and just blown away by that. But let's talk a little bit about what we just saw. And I understand that that there's a switch in the cockpit that's called a toga switch that may have been accidentally activated by the first officer. So if you could explain, Jeremy, sort of what this switch is and what toga means.
TOGA is an acronym. You'll find in aviation there's lots and lots of acronyms. Takeoff go around is what it stands for. It's a switch. It's an automated switch which triggers an automated response for the airplane to go into a takeoff mode. Typically used on approaches to landing that need to be called off. The approach can be called off for various reasons, whether it be it could be anything as simple as a deer on the runway, another aircraft on the runway, spacing in terms of what air traffic control has to keep airplanes at a certain distance apart. Busy airports where you'll see lineups of airplanes, like if you go down and look at Miami, which is our major airport close to where we're located. On an evening, you'll see lineups of airplanes, lights in the sky, and they all have to be timed just right. And if they aren't, then it may be air traffic control will tell the pilot to go around and you go around and I don't know what alarm that was. There was a bicycle going by. You go around and circle back and do the landing. Procedurally, they plan to land. They plan for these things anyway in terms of on landing. There's a procedure. If you do a missed approach is another term for it. They have a planned route, especially on, they'll typically fly to a certain heading and maybe maintain runway heading. On their charts for instrument flying, they would see what the plan is to do. Because there's geographical factors they have to consider and all that. This button is located on the throttle quadrant on the airplane and switch, really. And it seems by what happened is he inadvertently bumped it. Apparently that can happen. They were flying through some turbulence at the time, and it's not it can happen. You bump it, and so it triggered it. You can see in the animation, and that was all taken from the flight data recorder and voice recorder. You don't hear the voices, but you see the transcript of what they say.
Right, and so from the animation, it appears the toga button was pressed, and then there was a reaction of the aircraft. We saw the throttles advance and throttle up, and then we saw the nose of the aircraft pitch up. And so, if you could sort of talk to, the pilots being disoriented and sort of what effect that has on the pilots.
It seemed there may have been a disorientation on the pilot flying. That shouldn't, typically, when you're going into that situation. The plane did exactly what it was supposed to do. It would add power, pitch up, and start to climb as if it was departing the field in a takeoff. What happened there is they figure he may have had a somnographic illusion, they call it, which is an acceleration feeling in your mind, and your body senses it. We all have in our inner ear system. There's fluids in there, and that's how we maintain our balance as people and creatures, so we can stand upright and all that sort of stuff. And we're really designed. What's that?
You calling me a creature?
A creature? I don't know. We are creatures, and they all have similar systems. At least I believe mammals do. I don't think amoebas maybe don't have this, but your inner ear system, that's how we can be bipedal and walk on two legs. It's quite amazing, actually. But we can do wonderful things as human beings, but we can't. We're not designed to fly. And so there's things that can happen when you fly. And that's why sometimes people may get airsick or even seasick sometimes, because those fluids in your ear, they move around and they don't stop moving, and your body can't understand what's going on. There's a balance issue with that. And it works in conjunction with your eyes as well, and that's how you keep things upright. It's how you can catch a ball. You can do all sorts of things in sports. But what he was feeling, what happens is sometimes if there's an acceleration, that could be the same as tilting your head back. And there's little hair sensors inside that detect that. And it can, on occasion, give the feeling that you're in a steep climb just from that acceleration. So the engines accelerated unexpectedly. And he may have felt that because later on he says, we're stalling, which they were not doing. There was no indication of a stall. And a stall being not an engine stall, it's an aerodynamic stall where an aerodynamic stall basically is where the wing stops generating lift. And so the lift is stalled. And if the plane stalls, it typically wants to go down. So you train for that. And one of the ways to recover from a stall is to pitch the nose down and get your airspeed back so you can maintain flight again. He went and he reacted thinking he was stalling and put it into a steep nosedive with the engines full throttle. And you can see by the result, the number indications of the airspeed just escalated really high. Typically at that, where they're at, they're doing about really not more than 200 knots in around a terminal area of an airport like that, getting ready to land. And I was looking at there, I mean, just before the video cut to show the animation cut to show the actual crash video, he was at 1,100 feet doing over 400 knots. Like that's nearly cruising speed. That's kind of unrecoverable. At least they would have been able to recover had they more altitude. But
so let's this phenomenon. Let's talk about segue into training quickly, and let's talk about how the pilots rely on their instruments in the flight deck to really give them a sense of awareness and orientation.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's kick on to what I was saying. Being disoriented because of physiological factors can be overcome by actually understanding the instruments that are on the console in front of you. Various, between your airspeed, your pitch attitude, and all these things, rate of descent and rate of climb, all those things combined, there's a scan technique where you can actually understand what the airplane's doing and through the instruments, because those are going to give you accurate representations of what the airplane is doing, because you can't necessarily see outside the window. If you're in a cloud, for example, if you can't see a horizon, and I don't know if they were in the clouds, they were certainly above them because they descended through them. So if you can't see, they'll call it like being in the soup. It's like even if you've flown as a passenger and you're descending through the clouds, you look outside.
Oh yeah.
You see nothing, right? You really can't tell what's up or down. So you can't rely on what you're feeling because your body's not going to tell you the truth. And
Good point.
so if he had read his instruments, he would have seen he wasn't stalling. He could have seen his airspeed. He could have seen his pitch attitude. Was nothing too extreme. And but why didn't he do that is the question. And
you know what? We'll. I'm certain that that's being investigated, and we'll have to. I'm looking forward to seeing what the end result is of the investigation and sort of how the industry can learn and grow from this accident. And we're certainly, once that report's out and finalized, we're certainly going to come back here and brief everybody, and we'll talk about it just as we did today. And it's fantastic to see you, my friend, even though we're not in the same room, thanks to the pandemic, but hopefully we will be soon.
Yeah, we're getting there. They're certainly looking at the pilot's training. And by all accounts, it seems there were some challenges with that. And I think we start to see he apparently has a history of panicking in certain situations in his flight training. And which kind
of... This is the first officer you're referencing.
First officer, because he was the one flying the airplane.
Right.
And the question is how he kept passing through the system. And there seems to be discussion on how when he applied for the job there at Atlas, a company that's expanding quite rapidly and trying to hire pilots quickly. There may not have been any knowledge of this pilot's training situation with that, and why that wasn't the case. Why, you have ratings, and he was able to pass certain ratings, but there was a history of challenges throughout multiple times throughout this training. Of various ratings, because training is all about you're doing recurring training all the time as a pilot, and especially at a professional pilot. So you're being analyzed and make sure your skills are true, because it can be a perishable skill flying if you're not flying for a while. So what if he had a history of panicking? Possibly that was something that maybe should have been looked at, and as we could see the result.
It should have been flagged and shared.
Yeah, and why that wasn't happening. So I'm sure they're going to start looking into that. And this happens sometimes in training. They've done, and sometimes you've seen results after these things. They make changes. They'll put more hours. There was a crash of the Colgan -8 Q400, which resulted in the 1,500-hour minimum now for pilots even to be in the right seat, which is sort of second to a captain before they can fly commercially. Thinking that may be better, more training in theory, is because there was a time that you didn't really require. You could do 300 hours and become in the right seat and kind of train as you fly. The question is the quality of the training. I think that's what's really important. So, that's something that they'll definitely start to look at.
Absolutely, and lessons certainly to be learned. So yeah, we're gonna wrap this thing up. And
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, it was a good talk. And as always, it's good to be with you. Good to see you.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see everybody on the next one. Thanks for watching.
All right.
And before you leave, if you liked what you saw, be sure to go ahead and subscribe and like and smash that notification bell somewhere up there. Jeremy's trying to find it. That way you're notified each time we post a video. And any feedback, we're more than welcome to. You can leave that just down below in the comments. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.